Every good photo edit starts with a cup of coffee. And a gather around.
Okay, just to give you an idea of what I got going on here with my still life. This is my light source. Caught my eye with the blinds and the strong light coming in. And this is my subject matter. So I've got all these shiny coffee pots. I went with a little theme here. Things from the kitchen. I like coffee.
I like coffee.
I've got some light modifiers like a colander, pizza tray, and I took it all up here because that's where I've got the light. Oh, and I'm shooting this on my phone. So what I've got back here is a light modifier. It's serving as a backdrop right now, but put it in front of the light source. Look at the difference. This would not be good for a portrait. That would be much better. But even with still life, harsh, soft. Or pop in one of those modifiers. Okay, so I shot this many different ways. That pizza tray turned out to be pretty cool. The colander that I had up there was nice too. I had a few different coffee pots of different sizes that had different textures and things. So I kept changing that up a little bit, and of course tried all sorts of different compositions. I know what you're thinking. I don't have a light modifier, Mr. Barrett. That's okay. Got a little dishcloth here. Diffused light, non-diffused. Dishcloth, no dishcloth. Check it out. So like I said, I took all these on my iPhone, and these are some of my favorites. I did some split toning with a couple of them. I did all the processing in Lightroom and converted them to black and white because I thought it looked really nice with the surfaces and the contrast of the light. So a couple of them like these have the modifiers on them, and I really like that gooseneck kettle. Came out nice in these, and that I think is my fave. Alright, so that was the still life with objects. Now we're going to take a look at the still life about a person. That person just so happens to be me. So let me walk you through how I got to this. This is kind of the picture that I had in mind. It was the boxes on the shelves here that really caught my eye. This is kind of how I saw it. Let's take a look at the big picture here. So first off, I had to get the composition down and settled. So I roughly had the camera on the tripod and framed things up and started putting things in place. I really liked this area down here initially. I liked how it made it look like the cameras were all floating in the still life, and I found it interesting that the still life was contained within these little cubbies here and on this bigger shelf up top. This is kind of a story of photography and me. At first I wanted to be a painter or a cartoonist, and that was my thing, and that led into experimenting with photography in the darkroom and old cameras and things. And then that led into becoming an educator. So we have the pencil sharpener there, old school style. So on the bottom row here, I learned on a camera very much like this one, a film camera. And then this middle one is a DSLR. And then that became a mirrorless camera with video capabilities. So that's the evolution down bottom there of the cameras I learned on. So it's a story of photography and me. So once I got it settled and I got the composition set with the camera, then I started playing with light. This is me playing with my flashlight on my camera with a really long exposure and just illuminating parts of the still life and seeing what that looked like. But then I thought, well, I really like the still life overall, and I would like an overall kind of exposure. So that led me to the idea of HDR, high dynamic range. So you basically take 3 photographs at least. One is doing the exposure your camera tells you to do, and that's what this one is. So it's a good exposure. The histogram for it looked good. It had good highlights, shadows, and in between. This one here is underexposed by 2 or 3 stops, so drastically so So it's way too dark, but in the highlights where we have the glares on the metal and the glass and things like that, you're going to get more detail. It's not as blown out. And then in this one, this is extremely overexposed. So I think this one is even by 4 or 5 stops. Since everything was really bright anyhow, there's a lot of white, I went pretty far with this to get detail in the lenses in there. And in the shadow area, back in here in the bellows, that's what really caught my eye, like it was getting way too dark in that first exposure. You see how dark that is? So here, I was definitely going to get some detail back there compared to that one. So this is where I ended up. What you do is you come down here and you select the 3 photographs that you took. So that one's on target. I've got the underexposed and the overexposed, all 3 of them selected here. I will right click and go to this photo merge HDR. Click that and a dialog box comes up. This stuff doesn't really matter much for this because that's for when things are moving. We don't have anything moving here, so we don't have to worry about deghosting. And don't worry about that other stuff. And hit merge. And there it is. So then what I did was I took that one into the develop module. So I'm going to speed this up about 600%, straighten it, crop it like it's hot. Do a little adjustment on the exposure, highlights, shadows, definitely the clarity and texture. And then down here in the sharpening, and when sharpening, you see there's an exclamation point there. That's to remind me that I need to zoom in to 100%. Crank that up quite a bit, and you see how it gets all crunchy out here. Well, then we get the masking and bring that up until that goes away. Bring in a little detail, take the sharpening down a little bit, and there's my final one. Hope you enjoyed. So like I mentioned before, I was playing with a little light painting. So I put some iPhones behind the cameras here. I didn't have enough iPhones, just mine and my daughter's. So I took separate exposures, moving the phone each time with the intent of combining them all along with this one. So I brought all 4 of those photographs into Lightroom and then Photoshop, and then masked away the areas that I didn't want and combined the areas that I did. And I came up with this. Looks pretty sharp. I still like the other one better, but that's pretty cool too. And then this, I was just playing around with some light graffiti. You just have to do it. Now, Hoppa'to. Be a leader.
And a gather around.